I'm sorry. Do I need to start over again, or are we good?
We don't even know
anyway.
if it's beautiful or not.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody, again, with the speaker on. This morning we have myself, Commissioner Langford, Commissioner Bill Truax, Charlotte County, Commissioner Cruz from Manatee, and we have Commissioner Cutsinger with us from Sarasota. And now we've called to order. If we would, let's rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today and we thank you for a beautiful day and a wonderful day, Lord. And we just ask that you would give this board the wisdom and knowledge that it needs to govern this precious resource, Lord, and to do the right thing for all the people that we serve on this board. Lord, we thank our men and women that serve us in the military, 911 responders, our police, our firefighters, our paramedics. Lord, we just lift them up to you and pray that you keep your hand of protection upon them as they do their best to protect and serve us with everything that they have, Lord. We just ask you continue to keep your hand on them. Lord, go with us today to help us to be a better place, Lord, and just help us to be nice to folks outside in the world, Lord, that they could see you through us. We ask all these things now in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We'll go to our host county remarks now, and we'll turn that over to Commissioner Truax.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to welcome everybody here to Charlotte County today. We thank you for coming to the meeting. A special shout out to our oldest participant in the room, Mr. Dorian Popescu, who's been coming to these meetings for something like 50 years. I don't know. It's crazy. And he goes to work 2 hours a week. I don't know. But he's dedicated. And welcome. We have County Commissioner Ken Doherty in the house as well. And I saw Commissioner Teseo. He's in the back of the room. Welcome, guys. You'll get to introduce yourself. But again, thanks for coming here today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
All right. Public comments. I have two cards. Tim, Richie.
You please have Good morning, commissioners and everybody in the chamber. My name's Tim Ritchie. I'm a resident of Charlotte County, and I am the founder and president of March Against Mosaic. And I just handed you a little picture that's up at Fort Meade in Mosaic. And that's the operator inside the water cannon blasting the rock. And this is called blending the matrix. And this is before they shoot it up the pipe to the beneficiation plant. That's one of our major problems we have in the state of Florida. And I see this. I was at the meeting the other day, and I agree with our commissioners of Charlotte County that we shouldn't be paying that much money. Matter of fact, I don't think any of the counties should be paying any money for this. You want to know who I think should be paying for this? I think Mosaic Fertilizer should be paying for the whole bill. That's their master plan. Here's our water authority, and this is where they want to put the Mosaic beneficiation plant in 2025. That is exactly 15 miles from this chamber, and we don't want to see this. This was 1971. When the Peace River was completely white and wiped out almost everything. And this is what they want to put, these 8 giant clay settling areas. Well, Mosaic wants to be in Charlotte County with the United Way and our Chamber of Commerce. They want to be at the office in DeSoto County. We want Mosaic We're not worried, and by the way, thank you, Doug. Incredible information again. We don't want any more wetlands destroyed, creeks or streams. We want to know, where is the money that is going to take care of all those clay settling areas and the gyp stacks, like the wonderful Mosaic Bartow, which is now heading to 500 feet tall. It's allowed to discharge up to 27 million gallons per day of blended acidic wastewater. What about the maximum concentration levels? There's a technology out there, they can take the pollution, like at Piney Point, they could have taken the water down to zero, because I spoke to the president of Enclear. But he told me why they didn't do that. He said, money, Tim. Drinking and bathing water are the most valuable commodities in the world. They provide all of us life. And I read these reports, I keep reading their filings, and Mosaic is going to be discharging more pollution into the Peace River. They're building more outfalls, and in the 1,000-page report today, the one thing that I do not see mentioned once is the 2025 Mosaic beneficiation plant in 8 clay settling areas. Here we have tourism in the paper. That's what drives Charlotte. We have the water smells funny. We had the brain-eating amoeba. And now we have the money for the reservoir. I think Mosaic should pay for the reservoir, the whole bill, the entire bill. Thank you very much. By the way, I have a special guest today. He's going to be talking about organic soil and remediation. That's my oldest brother, Randy Ritchie.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we have Mr. Randy Ritchie. Y'all have three minutes, so try to wrap her up quick as you can.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Randy Ritchie. I am the CEO of Malibu Compost. We are, I would say, the leading compost manufacturer in the United States. We're the only real organic, biodynamic, and non-GMO compost that's made on farms on large scale in the United States and possibly the world. So Tim asked me to come in today, and I've been reviewing this a bit, and I've been reviewing some of the documents. And one of the big things that I look at is in terms of reclamation and in terms of runoff and in terms of where water is going, and as Tim mentioned, drinking water and healthy water for bathing and drinking. One of the big things for me, I've worked on several reclamation and remediation projects, large projects. And I'm one of those people who is on the opposite side of the fertilizer world, where you have conventional fertilizer that's part of the Haber-Bosch methodology that started over 100 years ago. We're on the other side, where we actually use, I see In God We Trust, we use what God gave us, the microbes, the soil biology, the soil organisms that are in the soil food web. So I look at the reclamation projects and I go, so how are you reclaiming all this land? When you have rains, when you have issues like hurricanes that come and affect us, and you have runoff, and then you have the cycle of rain and the cycle of water, and how we have fall, and you have acidic water, and you have acidic runoff. When you hit areas that are like in 3, a pH of 3, a pH of 4, below a pH of 5, you are in a toxic environment in terms of pathogens and in terms of cancer-causing biology in our bodies. So one of the things that I think about all the time is looking at this whole thing is, how is all this going to be reclaimed? If you don't add the biology back into the areas that have been mined and the areas that have been stripped of biology, because phosphates and salt-based fertilizers, there's tons of studies on this globally, destroy biological populations. The most important thing that we have on this planet that keeps us going is bacteria. God created bacteria. He created an entirely beautiful soil food web with bacteria and fungi, actinomycetes. We've got soil animals. So is anybody biologically testing these areas? Is anybody showing what can be grown back in those areas or not be grown back in those areas? It's one thing to say, yeah, we're reclaiming it just to let it come back. But when you have radioactive particulates, how long does that take? What's the half-life of that? How long does it take to bring that biology back? And the other thing that biology does that most people don't think about, and I'll wrap it up with this, is the bacteria in the soil. Those colonies also help to remediate at soil level toxic water and toxins and environmental toxins. So I think it's something, I think this is a beautiful report. I read this piece of it as well, but I think that's a really important thing for all of you guys to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing to amend the budget for 2023. Ann Lee.
Oh, I'll work on projecting better. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Ann Lee of your staff. This morning I'll be discussing the FY23 proposed budget amendments. For our agenda this morning, I will review the potential updates to the FY23 budget, open the discussion, and present a motion for your consideration. When we met in February, I discussed the reasons behind a budget amendment as well as potential updates to the FY23 budget. Since then, we have obtained additional information about cost increases and have worked hard to balance the need for an increase to the budget, both to ensure we're not overspending funds and continue to meet our debt covenants against potential impacts to our customers. As such, we propose to amend the budget in several components in the budget. The largest dollar change we are proposing will be to the CIP projects. These changes are based on board direction on projects as well as the need to do an owner direct purchase for the Phase 2B pipeline, which will be discussed in today's meeting under regular item number 6. This CIP change reflects an increase to the budget of $23.4 million. However, as these funds are slated to come from the authority's line of credit, there will be no immediate impact to our customers. The second part of our proposed amendments to the FY23 budget are in the expenditures that make up our variable rates, specifically the power and chemicals used to make and produce water. As discussed at the last board meeting, we have received a notice from FPL regarding a cost increase for 2023. Since then, we have received confirmation of the cost increase from FPL of an additional 10% over the 27% rate increase that we experienced this time last year. Now, although we haven't received any confirmations of additional cost increases from FPL for the rest of 2023, there is a chance that they could increase costs if fuel continues to rise or there's another storm that has a lot of damages. They always recoup those costs. In regards to chemicals, we opened our chemical bids on March 6th for the 4 chemicals whose vendors elected not to renew their contract. As you can see from this table, we had one chemical, copper sulfate, which is marginally used, decrease in costs. However, the cost on the other chemicals increased between 12 and 63%. And this is on top of the large chemical price increases that we saw last year. So in the past, the authority may have been able to absorb these cost increases. However, as we only increased the metered rate 7 cents per 1,000 gallons instead of the 18 cents per 1,000 gallons indicated by our rate model for FY23, we were already absorbing cost increases, and since then those costs have continued to increase. We're currently faced with not meeting board policy for our debt service coverage ratio of 1.5 times, which could potentially negatively impact us when we go to the bond market in '25. As a result, we're recommending that the board increase the water use rate for the delivered water from 89 cents per 1,000 gallons to $1 per 1,000 gallons for the rest of the year from April through September, which is basically the amount that our rate model indicated we should be charging. And just to be transparent, the authority has seen cost increases in other portions of our budget. However, with these changes that we're proposing, we will be able to absorb those cost increases. So at this time, I'd like to address any questions that the board may have or concerns.
Board members, y'all have any questions, Ms. Ann Lee, about the budget? Okay.
All right. Well, I'd like to present this motion for your consideration.
Okay, board members?
Public comment.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the budget amendments? Okay, seeing none. Do I need a motion to close?
I'll
public
make a
hearing?
motion to close public
Okay.
input.
Second.
All right, have a motion to second, to close the public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, we got agenda item number 1 here for the amendment, or budget amendment. Do I hear a motion in favor of, or in opposition of, or any discussion?
I'll move approval. Do
Okay.
you need me to read it?
No, sir. I'll motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 amended budget in the amount of $101,955,089 made by Commissioner Truex. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cutsinger. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Number 2, Ann Lee. I have a motion by Commissioner Truex.
Second.
Approval. Second by Commissioner Cutsinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. All righty. Thank you, Ann. Consent agenda. Anybody wish to pull anything, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, have a motion by Commissioner Truex, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, regular agenda item. Number 1, water supply condition reports. Mr. Richard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Richard Anderson of your staff. Thing's kind of loud, isn't it? Item number 1, as usual, is the water supply conditions report. We're going to cover, as usual, the water supply conditions for the month of March, and then your demands and water usage for the month of February. First off, we're looking at the rainfall trends. The rainfall has stopped as of about January. We had 1.5 inches in January and less than an inch of rain in both February and March. We only had 0.3 inches in March, so it's that dry time of year right now for us, which is what we expect this time of year. River flows, as the rainfall drops, so does the river flow. As you can see, we've trended down and we're now below the average as well as the 130 CFS requirement for river flow for us to take water from the river. So we are now off the river. The current flow is about 87 cubic feet per second in the river, so we're well below what we need to be at the 130 to take any water at this point. River withdrawals. For the month of January and February, we averaged about what we were using, about 26 to 30 MGD from the river. So we were able to maintain the levels, as you'll see in a minute, in the reservoir. In March through the 17th, we averaged about 9 MGD. After that point, we completely shut off, so we averaged about 5 MGD from the river in March. So starting to rely on the reservoir, as you'll see in a second, for our supply. Surface water storage. Again, January and February, we were about 6.7 billion gallons. Right here, as we went into March, we started using water out of the system. As of the 17th, we were at 6.3, and as of today, we're down below 6 billion at about 5.7 billion gallons in the surface water system. ASR storage, as you can see, we've been in storage mode since about late November, December. We have about 8.8 billion gallons in that system. And as of this Monday, because of the lack of rainfall, we have started using water from the ASR system. We're drawing out about 10 million gallons a day out of that system right now. When you take a look at our estimated days of supply, as you can see, if we were to provide our average day to you of about 28.5 MGD, we have 406 days of supply. If we delivered our contractual obligation of 34.7, we have about 333 days. So somewhere between 11 and 13 months of storage on hand at this point. And now we're going to take a look at the water supply, the water demands for the month of February. The authority delivered about 31.5 million gallons a day in February. Your county and city facilities delivered about 56.5 million gallons, total of almost 88 million gallons a day for the month of February. As usual, about 4.5 of that went to consecutive customers of Manatee County. Total used by the authority and customers was 83.3 million gallons. And taking a look at Charlotte County first, your individual usage, you purchased about 13 million on average from the authority, produced about 0.8 from your burnt storage facility, total of 13.8 average for the month of February. And I want to point out on the long-term trend, this is looking at the 10-year average usage. Just looking at the increase from 2012 to 2022, this is through the blue bars through September of 22, averaging about 1.8 MGD, 1.8 percentage increase per year in your usage. In DeSoto County used 0.73 from the authority, again produced about 0.3 from their facility at the Correctional Institute, total of about 1.02 for the month. Your long-term, I did the average for DeSoto County going back only 5 years. Some of the data here previously was due to your high flushing events that you had. So looking from 2018 to present, your growth is still about 2.6% per year. And Manatee County used 39 MGD to your customers within your system, exported about 4 million to Sarasota County. Again, 4.5 million to your consecutives on the coast for a total production of almost 48 million gallons for the month of February. And looking at your long-term growth, again, for the 10-year period, about 2.6% average growth in water sales or water delivery. And Sarasota County, Sarasota used 15.76 for the month. Imported about 3.75 and produced about 6 MGD from your facilities at Carlton and Venice Gardens. Total usage was 25.5 million gallons per day. And looking at your long-term average, 10-year average, almost 2%, 1.9% average growth for the 10-year period. And finally, City of Northport. City of Northport used almost 2 MGD from the authority for February, produced about 1.5 million, exchanged about 0.2 from Sarasota County. Total usage was 3.6. And their long-term average gets the award for the highest at 3.3% average growth per year over the last 10 years. Rolling it up to looking at the total regional demand for the system, looking at the growth over the 10-year period, 2.2% total average growth for including the utility, the customer utilities, and the authority system. And wrapping it up, again, we used about 88 MGD for the month of February. That left just under 17 million available for delivery, or 84% of our available capacity was utilized for February. And I have one other item I'd like to touch on real quickly, if I may. We wanted to provide an update regarding the regional systems conversion to free chlorine. At the request of the Florida Department of Health and the FDEP, local utilities initiated a temporary change in our disinfection process in what's commonly called a free chlorine conversion of the distribution system. The authority and all of our customers use chloramines, which is a mixture of chlorine and ammonia. And this conversion, temporary conversion, basically means we turn the ammonia off and feed only chlorine into the system for a period of time. Other systems in the area use it. City of Venice is a full-time user of free chlorine. City of Sarasota uses free chlorine on a regular basis, so it's a common practice. So approximately a month ago, this press release went out on March 8th. It was issued by the authority, DeSoto County, Charlotte County, City of Northport, and the City of Punta Gorda. We notified the customers of this change. It became effective on March 14th, and it runs through May 14th, approximately 60 days. And this was, again, the recommendation of the Department of Health. The Inglewood Water District and Sarasota County are both also going to participate. Inglewood started a little bit early. They started on March 1st, and Sarasota County is going to start their conversion next Monday on April 10th. So this is a common practice used around the country. It's considered one of the tools in our toolbox for doing routine distribution system maintenance. It helps reduce system flushing. It helps provide proper residuals in the ends of the distribution system. And it also minimizes naturally occurring biofilms in the system. It's especially effective for large systems or systems that have long detention times, like some of your systems, like Charlotte County, DeSoto County, and Northport all have long detention times within your systems. So far, discussing how it's going with your utility staffs, we're hearing very minimal customer calls, customer complaints. Seems to be working very well, no issues at this time. Once this is done, at the end of May, we're going to meet, kind of work over the details with your staffs, evaluate how well it went, and then we'll determine if we need to do another conversion in the future. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have on that or on the regular presentation.
Board members, any questions? Thanks, sir.
Great, thank you.
Regular agenda item number 2, Mr. Manson.
Doug Manson, your general counsel, and I'm not your lobbyist, but your lobbyists are up in Tallahassee doing lobbying. So it's the peak of the season, halfway through the session, so I'm giving you the highlights from the legislative update that was in your board book. The most important thing, at least for the authority this year, and for many of you, is the budget. Right now, the Senate's taking the lead, and all that means is that the Senate bill is the bill number that the budget will go under. So the Senate and House have now combined the bills, and they now can form a joint budget committee. The chambers are hundreds of miles or hundreds of millions of miles, I think of the description in your update, apart, but that's standard for a budget at this point in the legislative session. And the Joint Committee will now begin the negotiations to take the House budget and the Senate budget and then come up with a budget that they both agree on, and then we'll send to the governor, typically at the very end of the session. In the budget, right now, Phase 3 pipeline for Sarasota has $3 million in the Senate budget. We requested $5 million. And the reservoir project, number 3, has requested $25 million. It's in the House budget for $12.5 million. And Phase 2B, the Charlotte County Pipeline, we requested $5 million that didn't get included in either budget. The Senate also includes $120 million for resiliency grants, whereas the House budget has $300 million for resiliency grants. And the resiliency money is where this money is coming for your projects that, you know, I'm sure many of you have applied for as well, for utility and other roadway projects and things that are needed for increased resiliency. There's a bill pending now it's Senate Bill 742, Administrative Procedures. It looks like it's a bill just about procedures, who should be concerned, right? But it actually is pretty broad in scope. And the purpose of it is to like identify areas of improvement and to increase efficiency within the environmental permitting and much of the other permitting that goes on through Chapter 120. So they want each one of the agencies to look at their permitting, make sure that they reduce duplicative permitting, cross-agency permitting, with each one doing something, and then create a more efficient permitting. And they have to provide a report by December 31st, 2023. Whenever you see things like this, it means there's going to be rules being promulgated, rules being repealed, and rules being modified. So we've got to keep an eye on that and see what happens coming up next. The confirmations for the Southwest Florida Water Management District, there's currently 5 board members that are up for confirmation. And right now they've been recommended for confirmation by the Senate Environmental and Natural Resource Committee on March 27th. And it'll go, obviously have to be voted on by the full House before it can go through. So the full Senate. But that's a good track to have the committee recommend all of them, so that's going to go and it'll be on their agenda to be voted up. One of interest to all the utilities, it's a Senate Bill 304, and it's called United States Produced Iron and Steel in Public Works Projects. It's basically to require in contracts the requirement that any iron or steel product permanently incorporated into the project be produced in the United States. Currently it's made one committee, and it's set for 3 other committees. So it's moving. Senate Bill 346, again, it's public construction, so it has some effect on local governments. It deals with contracts with building public supply projects and any kind of public project. And it does have some things, I know, boring to non-lawyers, but the idea of, when you have to pay, when you can withhold payment, and it basically restricts the local government's abilities to be able to withhold payments to contractors. Senate Bill 604 and House Bill 401, sovereignty immunity. They're increasing the amounts. This is a concern for any government. Right now, I think they're looking at 200 to 300 in the House and changing it to 400 to 300 per incident in the Senate. They're also looking at increasing the cap on incidents from 2.5 to 5 million. So, significant when you get issues, dealing with sovereign immunity, which every local government does. The last bill is on the Environmental Protection Bill. This is like a land purchasing type of bill, and they're just increasing some of the threshold amounts. To go to the governing cabinet, DEP has a land buy greater than $1 million, they're raising that to $5 million. They're also putting in some more transparency in the process, that the appraisals have to be disclosed to the buyer so they can look what's going on. And currently there is no legislation on potable reuse or ASR as of April 4th. If you have any questions, I'll take those and probably take them back up to Laura Donaldson, our lobbyist, and Katie Kelly, and get you answers, because I'm not actively involved in lobbying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board members, you have any discussion or opinions or anything you'd like to send back?
Heartburn, but other than that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Doug. Okay, agenda item number 3. Miss Ann Lee, you're up again.
All right, Ann Lee of your staff, and I'm just going to introduce Michelle Martin. She is our long-term insurance broker. She's been with Brown & Brown, and she will be discussing our property insurance renewal and providing an update of the authority's insurance coverages.
Thank you, Ann. Good morning. Michelle Martin from Brown & Brown Insurance. As Ian said, I've been working with the authority for many years now. I work for a specialty division of Brown & Brown that only works with public entities in the state of Florida, including special districts, cities, counties, and school districts. And I've been in the industry about 30 years. The presentation we wanted to provide you with today includes going over all of the insurances that we place on behalf of the authority first, and a discussion of the market conditions. The market conditions that we're dealing with today are very different than we've dealt with in, it's called in a generation, due to Hurricane Ian and some other factors that we'll give you a little bit more insight on. And then we want to review your property insurance renewal options for 4/30/23 to 24. So those policies are effective on April 30th. And we would like for you to pass a resolution to allow us to renew those insurances for the property. So first of all, our current property insurance is with a company called StarTech, and it is with the Chubb Ace American Group, which is a highly rated paper, but they are a utility specialist property insurance brokerage. We brought them in when you did expansion for Reservoir Number 2 to do the builder's risk, and they've been a partner with the authority ever since then. They have provided us with superior rates and coverages to the market for over 10 years now. So as an overview, our limits that are provided are basically a total of the assets that we're insuring today are at a little over $136 million. We have limits under the program of $60 million for named windstorm, and for flood, including storm surge, of $5 million. None of your locations are in a special flood hazard area as defined by FEMA. And so we feel that flood limit is adequate. The current deductibles are listed there, and I'll talk a little bit about those in our comparison later in the presentation. But we're paying a little bit over $400,000 for that property insurance today. The other lines of coverage include liability coverages, which we also have placed with a specialty insurer called Glatfelter. It's National Union Fire, which is the AIG group. We've been with them for several years as well, and they have a special program for water districts, so there are some special coverages in there. And the coverages provided by them are general liability, automobile physical damage and liability, public officials, employment practices, and some light cyber liability. And the excess liability is just the additional limits. So you can see the premiums associated with those. In addition, we have a couple of other insurers for crime coverage, which is basically for theft of monies and securities from the authority. Your workers' compensation coverage is coverage provided to your employees for injury sustained while on the job, subject to Florida statute, pollution liability, and cyber liability. And you'll note there was a bill passed last year, and that data is protected about your cyber liability policy because that's secure information. So as I said, we have been working with the authority since prior to 2005. We do have a relationship with our current property insurer, StarTech. We were aware of some changes that were going to be coming down the pike last year on all property insurance. We've been in a difficult property market for several years now, and Ian just put some icing on the cake for us. So unfortunately, the authority was affected by Hurricane Ian, and so that has made our negotiations in the property marketplace just a little bit more difficult as well. So what's affecting the general, regardless of who was hit or not hit by Ian, there is the entire national insurance market is being affected this year. We call it a hard insurance market. And I briefly want to go over the reasons why. This, frankly, is going to affect everybody in this room, whether it be your homeowners, your respective entities, if you have a business, you need to be aware that these things are going to be impacting us, particularly in Florida. It's also not in Florida, but we're cat exposed, #1 cat exposed state in the nation. So first of all, we are dealing with inflation. Inflation not only affecting the cost of claims, but also the cost of what the insurance companies have to insure, and it's affected the reinsurance market as well. This is about an hour-long presentation, so I'm going to try to make it very brief. We got hit by Ian, #2. The reinsurance impact, about 40% of the reinsurance renewals for property insurance occur at 1/1/23. Our world was rocked. The reinsurance, which is the insurance that insurance companies purchase, so that has affected StarTech. In general, half the limits, double the retentions, and double the premium. So those things cannot be absorbed, and those things are being passed along to the individual insurance buyers this year. Also, we've been through quite a, since 2016, a period of the insurance companies not making any money. They're pretty much operating at break even on underwriting profit. And then the industry, particularly in London, has been looking at this for over a decade now, but there's a trend of climate change and how does that affect property and insured assets. There's an issue of valuation, which thankfully the authority got in front of, and so Ann has been working with some engineers. We've increased your values both last year and this year to address the valuation issues in the market. So just as an example, in 2017 we got hit by Harvey, Irma, Maria, unfondly known as him. In 2017 there was a huge loss to the industry. If you can look at that bright green 2017, that 103.7 is a combined ratio, which you may be familiar with for other financial applications, but basically that is the measure of profitability of insurance companies. Insurance companies make profit two ways: #1 by underwriting, #2 by investment income. And so since 2017 there was a big underwriting loss. Now it's fine as long as they're able to make investment income, so they can carry those losses. But there's basically been a break even since then. Move over to 2022 at the very end of the graph. The estimated combined ratio for 2022 is now 1.04, so 4% underwriting loss. So that's not good. Here is a timeline of events. I'm going to go ahead and move past this one unless anybody wants to go through this in depth, just in the honor of time. And then over the past 5 decades, there's been a 700% increase in insured catastrophic claims. And so you can see the graph here in the 1980s. Over the decade, the average was $7.6 billion. And in the first 2 years of the 2020s, it's $88 billion for insured cat losses. And this is for many reasons, which, again, I'd love to discuss with you, but I'll spare you that discussion. Feel free to call me if you'd like to discuss that further. So where does this leave the authority for their April 30th property renewal? Every year, as you know, we go out for bids to the marketplace. We approached 19 different insurers this year. And once again, StarTech has come up with what we believe to be the best option for you. It's certainly a big change from what we've had over the past 10 years. I'll go over those a little bit more in the next slides. The options were in the open market, basically, so in excess and surplus lines market. We are basically reducing our limits from $60 million for a named windstorm to $25 million. So one of the things they provided you with was how much does it cost to buy more than $25 million of windstorm limits, and it's going to cost you $100,000 more than what I'm going to propose, which is about $790,000 for your StarTech renewal. So I don't know that that's of interest. Our recommendation is just to renew with the $25 million limit with StarTech. The other best option that we could come up with was about $125,000 less for a lot less coverage. So for a $25 million limit in the open market, we are estimating in excess of $1 million premium to place that. And then we also would be missing some of the special coverages that arguably we are going to have with StarTech, even though our coverage is going to be limited this year. So again, our expiring premium is $423,000. Our renewal, and this is a not to exceed because we're still going to work on the terms and conditions for the next couple of weeks, but our renewal is at $790,000 with StarTech. I'm going to go through some of the details here. I'm going to go very quickly. These are highlighted in your packet as well, but I'm going to highlight some of the main changes. In addition to the premium increase, the all other perils deductible is moving from $50,000 to $25,000 and $50,000 to $100,000. All other perils means non-catastrophic, so excluding flood and wind, basically. So your fire, explosion, those sorts of perils that can damage your property. The named windstorm deductible is going to change from 3% of the units of insurance to 5% of your total value. So your total insured value this year is $143 million. And so 5% of that is about $7 million. So if you have another hurricane loss, your deductible is going to be $7 million under this program. We were not able to get anything better than that in the open market for whatever price. The entire state of Florida, we were able to get these lower deductibles, the 3%, in the past. And actually, if we think back to 2005, 2006, a similar situation actually existed back then, where all the deductibles in the entire state went to 5%. So there's no place that's offering under a 5% deductible this year, unfortunately. So that's the difference in the deductible. You can see this is a lot of information on this slide. I don't necessarily want to go through this entire slide. We did mention that we have adjusted our valuations both last year and this year to keep up with inflation, supply chain issues, et cetera, et cetera. So some of the cost increase is based on an increasing exposure base, if you will. So your assets are worth more. So our recommendation is to renew with StarTech. It is just over 6 months past the Hurricane Ian, and so we're still ongoing with claims adjustments. Some of your properties are needing, engineering reports and all kinds of stuff. Initially, we always try to estimate losses on the high side. We're thinking right now that your loss is going to be lower than originally expected. I believe that is going to give us, over the next couple of weeks, some additional pep to go back and negotiate. I'm confident I can get the terms and conditions better than what I presented to you, and we will continue to work on that. So again, that's a not to exceed. And with that, if there's any questions, Ann will present the motion to the board, but if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer any questions there might be.
Board members, any questions?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Truex?
Yeah, we had a lengthy discussion about this in our board meeting with the cost of the policy and the drop in coverage, and the question is it at some point does it make any sense to have coverage and go and not go self-insured? And I think that's something that is going to be important for the board to look at, not today, it's too late today, but I think moving forward we need to look at that to see how we can set up our own fund if you will, to try to create that opportunity. And I don't know if that's a great idea, a bad idea, but I think it's something that we need to talk about.
If I may, let me give you some information. We have definitely looked into that and strategized, and we are going to continue to look into that, and we'll be working with General Counsel on that. Florida Statute 624.4622 is where it dictates local government's self-insurance capabilities. One of the items under there is that the annual premiums have to be in excess of $5 million, which currently we do not have. However, there is a caveat on there that says that 2 or more local government entities could combine together through an interlocal agreement to be able to get to that $5 million. We'll have to work with Doug and his staff to make sure that we would be able to do that. It appears that there are some requirements for having additional reserves to cover those, so we'll have to get into depth, and we're going to be working on that to present later to you.
If possible, I mean, I'm going to throw us out there as a potential partner.
You're going to go to first.
So, yeah, I'd just like for our staff to be able to work with you guys to see if it's something that we can help with. And it'll save everybody, I think, at the end of the day, but appreciate it.
Anybody else?
No, I just, that was something I was going to throw out there as well, just to actually do some research and look into that, because if we're lowering coverage to 25 and then we've got a $7 million deductible and $1 million premium, I mean, it makes sense to really take a good hard look at maybe self-insuring, it seems like. Anyway, so good motion.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Truex.
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Cutsinger. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, Ms. Terry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with your staff. Regular agenda item number 4 is a presentation on our draft 5-year capital improvements plan and our 20-year capital needs assessment. This item is presented for board review and discussion, and we will be coming back to the board in June with a final draft for board approval. So the agenda today is really, we're just going to go over kind of the purpose and development and application of our CIP and CNA plans. We'll do a quick overview of the 5-year and 20-year budgets, highlight some of those key 5-year CIP projects, and then just go over the next steps in the process and the schedule. So with respect to the purpose, development, and application of our CIP, these plans, they provide a working blueprint for sustaining and improving the authority's infrastructure. They coordinate our strategic planning efforts, including financial capacity and physical development of our projects, and really stands at the center of our planning, operations, engineering, and finance departments. You can see here we've got our strategic plan pulled up, and you can see how the CIP we use work with our collaboration with our customers, meeting our collaboration and cooperation goals. Our projects are planned for meeting resiliency goals, and then of course our financial stability. So 3 out of the 4 main goals in our strategic plan are addressed during the CIP and CNI development process. So we talked a little bit about the strategic plan, just kind of working around the center here. We've got the CIP in the middle. Every 5 years, we do an update to our integrated regional water supply plan. So that master plan really hits on a couple areas. We're identifying the demands in the region out long range. We're identifying water supply projects that'll meet those demands, transmission projects that will ensure that those water supplies are getting to the centers of where those demands occur. And all of those projects roll up into a recommendation in the master plan for projects to move forward throughout the planning horizon. So we work with our operations staff, our finance department, and our engineering and construction departments to develop schedules and budgets. We bring them forward for those projects to our customers. And we see, based on their timings and needs of those projects, we collaborate and come up with a CIP program. So that's kind of how that whole process is developed. So let's just take a look at the overview of the next 5 years and our 20-year CNA budgets. Just a little by the numbers here. We've got 14 projects that have been identified over the next 20 years. 8 of those projects are regional transmission main projects. 3 of those will be occurring within the next 5 years, 2 of which are currently under construction. We have 4 water supply projects. 3 of those projects are in our current 5-year CIP. And we have 2 system-wide benefit projects. Both of those are in the next 5-year CIP. So the costs and the timing of these capital projects are coordinated not only with your staff, but also with the Water Management District and any federal or regulatory agencies, so that we can ensure we are getting the most funding that we can for our projects. So looking at our 5-year CIP, it's broken down here. We have a total 5-year CIP budget of about $815 million. That's broken down between water supply, transmission, and system-wide benefit projects. We have about $663 million in our water supply project bucket, $123 million in our transmission systems, and $29 million in our system-wide benefit projects. I just wanted to call your attention to, you can see, I'm going to go back here, this water supply bucket here, the $663 million, is really comprised of 3 projects. That is our PR3 project and the water treatment plant expansion, which is the surface water expansion project, and the brackish water RO project. Both of those projects are currently in the planning stage. However, only one of those water supply options is actually going to move forward into construction in the next 5 years, so just keep that in mind. So we've been very fortunate in the past to have received grant funding, not only from the Water Management District, but also from state and federal entities. And you can see here that in the 5-year CIP, we anticipate about $184 million in grant funds towards our 5-year CIP, leaving the authority's estimated exposure there at about $631 million. As we move forward into the 20-year CNA, or Capital Needs Assessment, that's from 2024 all the way out to 2043, that is also inclusive of that 5-year CIP. We have a total 20-year CNA of just over $1 billion, and that is comprised of approximately $703 million for future water supply projects, $360 million for water transmission main projects, and that same $29 million for those 2 system-wide benefit projects. Again, looking at the estimated grant funds available, where we see about $306 million of potential grant funding to help offset those capital project funds, leaving the authority's exposure at around $787 million. Again, we've kind of blocked off this first 5-year heavy lift. You can see this is our 5-year CIP. Drops dramatically. We have a little bit of an uptick here around FY24, or 34 and 35. That's where the large transmission main projects will come back into the system. The Phase 3C extension project and the Phase 2C extension projects. So let's take a real quick overview of some of those key 5-year CIP projects we've got coming up. The 3 water supply projects that we mentioned includes the PR3 project, the Peace River facility expansion. Those 2 combined are our surface water expansion projects. So we've got the storage component, the treatment component. And then we have the brackish water RO project. And this is a new brackish water groundwater well field and reverse osmosis treatment plant that will yield approximately 5 million gallons per day. And as I stated, both of these water supply options are moving forward right now, parallel through a planning process. And one of these water supply options will be dropping out of our 5-year CIP and moving into the 20-year once the budget estimates have been developed and we've got some comparison numbers there. Our 3 transmission system projects include the Phase 3C pipeline project. This is approximately 7 miles of 42-inch diameter water main to serve the growing demands in northeastern Sarasota County. That project is currently under construction. The Phase 2B pipeline project, it's 13 miles, again, 42-inch diameter transmission main to serve the growing demands in western Charlotte County, and this project is nearing construction. And then the Kings Highway pipeline replacement project. This is a relocation of an existing 24-inch diameter transmission main as part of the county's Kings Highway widening project. We'll be relocating and upsizing about 2 miles of that. That's from just west of I-75 along Kings Highway all the way to the DeSoto County line. Our 2 system-wide benefit projects include the Water Resources and Construction Department building. Here in the upper left-hand corner and center, you can see we are currently working out of the old ranch house and associated garage. These buildings are approximately 60 years old. We've been through numerous renovations on them already, but they really have reached the end of their useful life. We did sustain some damages during Hurricane Ian to the buildings, and we're currently looking at options to get some new facilities out there. The second system-wide benefit project is the partially treated surface water ASR project. This includes design, permitting, and construction of facilities to partially treat our raw surface water from the reservoir system and then inject it into our ASR system. Currently, we're injecting fully treated drinking water into the ASR system. We're proposing to take raw water from the reservoir, partially treat it through filtration and disinfection, and then put that into the ASR system. It'll provide cost savings as well as increase yield and our system efficiency. So what are our next steps and schedule? So the professional staff were provided a copy of this draft CIP and CNA at our March 8th board meeting, and any comments that we receive or feedback we will incorporate into the draft. We will bring that back to the professional staff for their review at our May 3rd professional staff meeting. Take any comments the board may have, put them all together, and bring the final draft back to the board for the June 7th meeting where we'll seek for approval of the CIP and CNA. I just wanted to note that approval of the CIP and CNA is not an approval of a project. It's just approving how it's incorporated into the budget. So with that, I'd like to take any questions you might have.
Board members, you have any questions for Ms. Terry? Any discussion, direction?
It's a lot.
Okay. Well, this is just strictly for board discussion and direction for the 5-year CIP and 20-year CNA, and it will guide the fiscal year 2024 budget development in this area. So, any suggestions, additions, or comments?
I have one question. The project that you said was going to drop into the 20-year out of the 5-year, which one was that?
It depends on, so we've got 2 water supply options
Right.
moving on a parallel track. We've got the surface water expansion project, and we have the brackish water RO project. We're moving those along. We're developing final budgets. You'll have regular agenda item 7 today. We'll cover the PR3 updated costs, but we're currently working towards getting a budget estimate for the brackish water RO project so that the board and our customers have an apples to apples comparison of those water supply projects. One is an 18 MGD water supply option. The other one is a 5 MGD. depending upon which project gets moved forward, the other project then will be moved out into the 20-year time frame. It won't move into construction during that 5-year period.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Terry.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 5, Mr. Knowles.
Good morning, members of the board. Mike Knowles with Authority Staff presenting regular agenda item number 5. This is an update to the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 3C Interconnect project. There's also going to be 2 motions associated with this presentation. I'll go over those in more detail in a minute. I'll be discussing the background of the project, talk about a proposed route revision from our design build team, and then discuss the authorization for property acquisition. This would be our temporary and permanent easements. At the conclusion of item number 3, we'd have our first motion, and that would be to accept the proposed route revision and the easement width that's going to be proposed. Item number 4 is our progressive design build, guaranteed maximum price. After that presentation, there'd be a motion whether to accept and amend the existing contract with Garney Construction to include the guaranteed maximum price. So background of the project, April of last year, the board approved the recommended route for the Phase 3C pipeline based on our feasibility and routing report. At that same meeting, the interlocal agreement with Sarasota County was approved, funding the project. October of last year, the Phase 1 contract for 60% design was approved by the board. And then in December, the board approved our early procurement package by means of owner direct purchase, which saved about $500,000 on the project from tax savings. Before I go into the design changes that are being recommended, I would like to acknowledge some of the staff that has worked very hard on your project. I can't put all the names up here. We wouldn't have time to talk about everybody. But it's truly a monumental task that they've gone from 0 to 60% design in 6 months on such a large project. So starting with Sarasota County, Mike Milet, the utility director, he's made himself available for any meeting that we've requested, and his direct involvement has led to cost savings on the project. Greg Rouse has been our point of contact with the utility department. Stoney Pope has helped us with the hydraulics in the county system. And Peter Peduzzi, the PM for the Lorraine Road extension, has kept us apprised of his project, in which about a third of our pipeline goes through his project area, so that coordination has been critical. Our general counsel has helped us with our first progressive design build contract and my first time with easement acquisition. So we appreciate that nice young man, Doug Manson, Brian Bolvis, and Carlin Kowalski. On our design build team, they have met every milestone that we've put in front of them. So thanks to Mark Kelly with Garney, Ben Turnage with Ardura, and Freddie Betancourt with Wade Trim. And then our owner's agent has helped us with very timely reviews of that contract and technical reviews from the pipeline design. So thanks to Mike Condren, Todd Basso, Liz Minyard, and Rod Pope. And the person that's probably worked the hardest on your team, on your project, is the PM for Garney. He asked me specifically not to put his name on here. He didn't need the recognition, but he didn't specifically mention photography. So would like to thank Rob Foltz for a lot of sleepless nights on this project to get us to this point. So Rob, be more specific next time. So our second item, the proposed route revision. This is a recommendation by our design build team. The exhibit you see in front of you here, this is the exhibit from the feasibility and routing report, which covered crossing, that's Clark Road running left-right on your screen. It was originally proposed to cross Clark Road on the eastern side of Cowpen Slough, going across to a proposed easement on a private residential property, and then proceeding west across Cowpen Slough and then north. I'm going to rotate this slightly for ease of comparison between the current route is shown on your screen here. This is in blue, the proposed easement on private residential property. What the team has done is taken a deeper look at long-term planning with DOT, the existing utilities that are out there, constructability, and really the main reason for the change is taking advantage of existing easements out here. So the design build team has recommended to stay on the south side of Clark Road in lieu of crossing over immediately. And the reason for that is there is a 30-inch diameter Sarasota County water main already on the south side of Clark. There's already an existing easement over that 30-inch water main. And through coordination, collaboration with Sarasota County detailed design, we've determined that both pipelines can fit within the limits of that easement. So those two properties on the south side are already encumbered by a utility easement. So for that reason alone, it just makes sense to stay on that south side. But there are other reasons for making that change, as mentioned above. So I would like to take a minute if anybody has any questions about the proposed change in crossing location for Clark Road.
Board members, any questions?
Makes sense.
Great.
No, thank you for that. I know, speaking to Mike, and I appreciate you mentioning his collaboration. He's got a lot of things on his plate, but he was very encouraged by this, and it makes a lot of sense, so appreciate the change.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the third item is the authorization for property acquisition. This would be our permanent and temporary construction easements for the pipeline. So as you can see on this screen, this is our typical cut sheet for a large diameter pipeline installation. It's a total of 75 feet wide. 50 of that is permanent utility easement. 25 is temporary construction easement. We've got our excavator and equipment for lowering pipe into the trench in our permanent easement. We have dewatering equipment on either side of the trench. We have an area for staging the pipe outside of our dewatering equipment. And then between the permanent and temporary construction easement, we have a place for piling up our spoils. The remainder of the temporary construction easement is to allow for staff and equipment to traverse around active construction sites. So we are requesting a total of 75 feet for the entire length of the pipeline project. However, we are requesting a little bit more on the south side of the project. For the first 1 mile north of Clark Road, we are parallel to a 16-inch diameter reclaimed water pipeline at Sarasota Counties. We're requesting additional 5 feet of temporary construction easement, so a total of 80 feet for that first mile, and that gives the contractor some flexibility to try to avoid relocating that 16-inch diameter pipeline. So essentially it's 75 feet the whole way, except for that first mile, it's 80 feet that we're requesting. In your board book, there are legal sketches and descriptions over 14 parcels. Each one of those has a permanent easement, legal sketch and description, and a temporary construction easement description. Those would be entered into the amended resolution as exhibit number 2. And this amendment to the existing resolution that covered just the alignment last year, it now covers the change in route on the Clark Road crossing and the easement acquisition that we just discussed. So before we go to the motion, does anybody have any questions about the width of the easement we're requesting?
Don't believe so, Mike.
Great, thank you.
Okay. We're ready for the motion?
Yes, sir.
For the first motion for A. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Cutzinger, seconded by Commissioner Truex for amend the resolution 2022-03 for the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 3 Interconnect. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that. Our fourth and last item for Phase 3C, we've got the Progressive Design Build Guaranteed Maximum Price. This would be an amendment to the existing contract with Garney to include the Guaranteed Maximum Price, which covers final design and construction of the pipeline. So where we're at with the Guaranteed Maximum Price, the design portion is about $2.26 million. The construction phase of the pipeline is at $37.8 million. And we have contingency and allowance in amount of about $9.9 million. Now, the contingency needs justification and approval from the authority to use on the project. So the total guaranteed maximum price that we're requesting is about $49.9 million. We do also have, I'll call them parallel costs to this project, where these are costs not included in the guaranteed maximum price, but the project budget is going to incur these costs. These would include the Phase 1 contract with Garney that's already been completed for 60% design, the owner direct purchase of pipes and valves, work orders with Stantec, who is doing our property acquisition and field data collection, our owner's agent work orders, an allowance for mitigation and insurance, our third-party review that's being negotiated with the district, and then a legal assistance allowance with our general counsel, and our estimated cost for easements on the project. So the total of those parallel costs are estimated at about $12.3 million. Talking about our overall budget for the project, it's at $62.6 million, comprising of three main budget sources. Our interlocal agreement with Sarasota County is $34.8 million. Our cooperative funding with SwiftMud is $25.3, and then we have alternative water supply funds from DEP and the district at $2.5 million. So that funding does not include the current state grant that Mr. Manson mentioned is going through the state right now. So if you add everything up between the parallel cost and the guaranteed maximum price, we're at about $62.26 million, or $340,000 below our current budget for the project. So if there's any questions about the amendment to the existing contract with Garney to include the GMP, be happy to address those.
Any questions, gentlemen? Okay. Hearing none. Entertain a motion for item B.
Move approval, item B.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Cutzinger, seconded by Commissioner Truax. Any further discussion?
Just that we're glad to see it moving forward, and very important to us, and thank you for the work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Regular agenda item number 6. Mr. Mike.
All right. One more. All right. For the record, Mike Knowles with Authority staff. This is regular agenda item number 6. This is the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 2B Pipeline Early Procurement Package presentation. There will be a motion at the end of this presentation for owner direct purchase authority. So I'll go over the background of the Phase 2B project, talk about what's in the early procurement package, discuss the next steps for the project and the schedule before we go to the motion. So similar track to our Phase 3C pipeline project, the 2B pipeline, the preferred route was approved back in April of last year through our feasibility and routing report. The interlocal agreement with Charlotte County was approved at that same board meeting funding the project. October of last year, the board approved the Phase 1 contract through 60% design with Woodruff & Sons, and there was an information-only presentation on the early procurement package. Another major milestone on this project, mid-March of this year, the design-build team delivered 30% design plans on 10 of the 13 miles of the pipeline. So the early procurement package is something that Woodruff & Sons identified early on in their Phase 1 work, looking at the amount of pipe and valves that they need on this project. They are recommending about 6 months out to start that early procurement ahead of construction. Construction is anticipated to start October of this year with the presentation of the guaranteed maximum price at the October board meeting. So timing-wise, this is looking back 6 months. Now would be the time for an early procurement package. One of our biggest costs in this project is hot-rolled steel, and as you can see, the price has been fluctuating pretty wildly in the last couple of years. So while we're not at the lowest point in the cost for steel in the last 2 years, we are far from the highest cost that it's been. But overall, the trend of hot steel has been trending up. So I don't know if there's a crystal ball to say this is the exact right time to buy steel, but timing-wise for the project, it's when it's needed. So we are requesting through owner direct purchase the ability to purchase 42-inch diameter steel pipe, 42-inch inline butterfly valves, pipe for our subaqueous crossing of the Mayaca River, likely HDPE, a flow meter assembly, and then associated yard piping, appurtenances, and other valves less than 42-inch in diameter, with the value not to exceed $20 million. So does the board, I'll pause for any questions the board might have before we go to the motion to allow us to do owner direct purchase not to exceed $20 million.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move to authorize the executive director to purchase materials for the regional integrated loop Phase 2B pipeline not to exceed $20 million for items which are purchased under Section 5.4.4 of the authority's procurement policy.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner Truitt. Do I hear a second? Okay. Second by Commissioner Cruz. Any further discussion?
Just that I think this is a great idea, and if there's any way we can incorporate this in the future for cost savings, it would be, I think, an opportunity. It's not taking money out of the contractor's pocket, but it's putting money in ours. So I think we should try to do that when we can. Thank you.
All righty. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, Mr. Terry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Terry Holcomb with your staff. Regular agenda item number 7 is an update to the Peace River Regional Reservoir number 3. This is our 30% update as part of our preliminary design, permitting, and third-party review phase. The presentation is for informational purposes only. There's no board action required today. The agenda through the presentation, we're just going to go over a little bit of history and background on the PR3 project. Ms. Katie Duty, a vice president with HDR and our project manager for the PR3 project, will present the design updates through the 30% review period, and then the preliminary design costs. We'll review those 30% updated design costs, cover our next steps, and take any questions you might have. So just a real quick project overview. Just kind of wanted to talk about how did we get to where we are today on the PR3 project. So starting in 2015, the surface water expansion project was identified in our integrated regional water supply plan update. They identified the surface water expansion project as a project to meet future regional demands. That project was also included in the Water Management District's regional water supply plan for the southern region. Moving into 2019, the Water Management District issued the authority a 50-year water use permit. One of the hardest things to do, right, for a large project is to secure that permit, right? So they issued that water use permit that authorized additional withdrawals off the Peace River from 120 MGD up to 258 million gallons per day. That permit allows the surface water expansion project to move forward. So that was kind of that very first domino that fell as far as the success and moving forward with the surface water expansion project. So in June of 2020, every 5 years, we update that integrated regional water supply plan. The demand projections for the region that were identified in that plan were projected to exceed our current regional capacity by 2030. So the surface water expansion project was still included as one of the projects to move forward to meet those regional demands. Again, it was included in the district's regional water supply plan as well. So knowing that a project of this magnitude could take up to 10 years to plan, design, permit, and construct, the board authorized moving forward with the storage component of that surface water expansion project, the PR3 project, through the feasibility and siting study. That effort concluded in December of 21, and we moved into the preliminary design phase for the PR3 project in March of last year. We came to the board with 15% design update presentation in October of last year, and we're back here today to give you an update at the 30% design completion. So just want to go over again, what is the surface water system expansion project? There are two main components to this project. That includes the storage component and the raw water withdrawal, which is the PR3 project, combined with the actual treatment component of that. That's the water treatment plant expansion. Those two projects together will yield up to 18 million gallons per day for water supply to the region. So let's just focus on the PR3 project, that component. At 30% design, we've got project features shown here on the image. Those items that are in green or boxed in blue are the new features associated with the PR3 project. It includes a new 9 billion gallon reservoir, a new river intake and pump station located adjacent to our existing intake down on the Peace River. Many miles of large diameter raw water piping connecting the new facilities to our existing infrastructure, and a new reservoir pump station located at Reservoir Number 1 that'll take water from Reservoir 1 and send it back over to the expanded water treatment facility. Just a real quick general overview of the schedule. We talked about it taking 10 years to develop a project of this magnitude. We indicated back in the 2020 update in the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan that new demands would be needed in the region by 2030. So working backwards, siting and feasibility study took place, design and permitting, anticipated construction, knowing that it may take up to 2 years to fill that new reservoir. Here is our general schedule. Right now, we're in the preliminary design phase, the permitting and third-party review. That's shown in the solid orange. This is where we are in the project's progress. This phase began in March of 2022 and will conclude this September. It will provide preliminary design for the project features, including their location, the size, how many, and the ultimate configuration. The permit applications will be submitted for this project in September, and that will conclude then the preliminary design phase for the project. The design documents do include an updated cost estimate, and the Water Management District will be completing their third-party review of the project, including not only the design documents, but also that cost estimate that comes along with it. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Duty to cover the design updates from our 15% presentation to our 30% presentation here.
Good morning. So Terry talked to you about the major components that are in this project. I'm going to give you a few more details to help you understand the magnitude of the project, and I'll also talk about a few of the changes from when we were here back in October with the 15% design to what we've got included in the 30% design. So as a reminder, the major feature of this project is a 5-mile long, 42-foot high embankment. We've talked before about, well, we're just digging a hole. We're actually creating a hole above ground, and that takes a lot of engineering work that goes with it. Terry mentioned the 2 pump stations we have. So the river intake is 138 MGD with capacity or space to be able to add pumps for future capacity later. There's also a 78.8 MGD reservoir pump station she mentioned. And then we've got many miles of large diameter pipeline that will connect the new river pump station over to the reservoir, interconnection between existing water storage facilities, and then back over to the plant. So to walk in a little bit more detail for our pump station, so this is down at the river. What's boxed in red is the existing pump stations that's down at the river. The new pump station has been sited just south of the existing, right between the existing pump station and the property line. There's a fairly tight corridor in there with a pretty strict conservation easement just on the other side, but we've been able to fit that in. It allows for the least disruption as you run the pipeline from that pump station over to the reservoir. And it includes, you can see in the bottom blue box, there are 6 pumps towards the top of that pump station, and then there's space on the bottom of it. The structure will be built out, but the pumps will be, and other equipment will be added at a future time when the existing pump station is decommissioned. Some of the things that have changed from the 15% design you won't see in this figure, but we've really streamlined what's needed for the pump station operation. So we've taken out some of the generators, an overhead crane, trash racks, and really aligned it with how the authority operates the existing pump station and fit the right equipment with it. Next up is all the conveyance. This diagram shows the existing in black and the new conveyance in orange. And at the 15% design, we had worked with authority staff to really maximize flexibility of how water could be wielded around the water campus. It resulted in a price that might be a little bit too expensive, and so we really sat back down with the authority staff and worked on what is needed for how to operate. Still providing some flexibility of moving water, for instance, between reservoirs 2 and 3. That's an important consideration for operating the facility and having maximum water quality and flexibility for where water comes from. But we've dropped out some of the large diameter piping that would have allowed water to move from Reservoir 3 to a different part of Reservoir 1. So there's some 54-inch pipe that's come out, as well as some aerial crossings. And really, at 30% design, this balances the need for flexibility while also value engineering out some things that may not have been used as frequently, such as a gravity line back to the plant. This also includes a little bit more detail on 2 crossings at Kings Highway. Our reservoir design further progressed, and we're really focused on detailing out the cross-section of the embankment. These particular details, how the reservoir is going to function, both in normal operating conditions and emergency operating conditions, is really important for the permit. We're going to submit later this year. That'll be the core of what we're looking at as we work through permitting. So the team has progressed the design, the seepage control system, and at 30%, we've got 2 possible cross sections, one very similar to the existing cross section, one a little bit different, will function the same. We're looking at constructability right now of which will be easier to construct, what's more cost effective, what's going to have the least risk when it comes to dewatering, which is a big component of embankment construction. Moving to the reservoir pump station, so this is again adjacent to the existing. The red box on the left side of the image is the existing Reservoir 1 pump station. The blue box is the new one. It includes 5 pumps at this location. And the team spent a lot of time working with authority staff to evaluate the pros and cons of building a new pump station adjacent to the existing versus replacing or rehabbing the existing, expanding it. And there's a real need to have the existing pump station in operation. That's how water gets from any of the water storage back over to the plant. So during construction, there cannot be interruptions to that ability to operate and move water. And so it was decided to place the pump station adjacent to it. The intake for it comes out of the northern side of Reservoir 1, so back to operational flexibility and maximizing water quality. That was part of the siting decision. And later, that Reservoir 1 pump station, because it's still there, can be rehabbed and will help future authority projects in being able to move water around. So a big part of the early design has been field work. For site characterization, we've done over 100 explorations. That includes borings, cone penetrometer, putting in monitoring wells, really understanding the groundwater and how it changes seasonally. That's another big part of both design and permitting. We also recently completed over 26,000 linear feet of geophysical investigation. This is to do some seismic investigation and also look at sinkhole propensity and make sure there's no issues related to that. We don't see concerns on the site for those issues, but as part of a thoroughness of design, we really need to make sure the site is suitable, including issues related to karst. We've completed generally all of the site topography. We've completed the bathymetry. There's a little bit more field work when it comes to data collection. In about a month, we'll get our geotechnical report from our driller that quantifies. We've been getting progress reports as we go, but we'll get the final site characterization report from them. Environmental is the other big field component, and so the wetland delineation, as I think I talked last time, we'd completed all of the wetlands delineation in areas impacted by the construction, and the team has really been working through how do we mitigate for those wetlands. It's in 2 different basins. There's some tightness on available credits when you look at banks in those same basins, and how do we make sure we fit the project site and minimize environmental impacts as we have them. The team has recently been working on maximizing our on-site creation potential. The authority staff has done a really great job of having an on-site mitigation for Res 2. How do we expand on what's worked really well and also save some money? It'll be a less expensive way to work through mitigation if we can. And then we've had some ongoing threatened and endangered species surveys. There are certain times a year we have to do nesting surveys or other species. Those are just about wrapping up, and we'll have a report of the work out there that'll be part of our permit application later this year. So just to quantify real quick, the figure on the right shows the kind of bolded colors or show the wetlands that are being impacted by the project site. It's a little bit faint, but you might notice, so the orange outline is the new infrastructure that's going in the reservoir. You can see we've adjusted the reservoir footprint to try to avoid hitting some of the more higher quality wetlands, really trying to get that balance of maximizing storage, and minimizing impacts. So this is the quantification of where we are right now on functional loss, what's being impacted by the construction. And then just a quick update on permitting. We've got some upcoming pre-application meetings with both DEP and the Corps of Engineers. We've had pre-application conversations with them. This is continuing to progress that. We're looking to submit a conceptual permit application next month. And then we'll follow up with a full permit application in September. Other agencies also consult on these permits, so we've been coordinating with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and National Marine Fisheries Services just to make sure we're considering the things they're concerned about so we don't get surprises later. And with that, I'll turn it back to Terry.
Thank you, Katie. So as part of HDR's work order, we requested a Class 3 cost estimate to be completed with the 30% design. What I wanted to do is just kind of real quickly go through exactly what a construction cost estimate classification system is and what does that mean with respect to the PR3 project. What you see here is a chart that's developed by the American Association of Cost Engineering. This is a widely used industry chart defining the level of accuracy within construction cost estimates. And you can see here on the x-axis, this is the life of a project as it goes through the design process. So the progression starts at basically project conception, goes all the way over here to the right through to 100% design. On the y-axis, you can see the range of accuracy given your estimate amount. So your estimate amount travels along this, this line in the middle. And then the range of accuracy starts very wide at the concept phase, right? You could be minus 50 to plus 100% from your cost estimate, and that's probably within your range of accuracy. As the project moves through design, through the 15%, 30%, you're into a Class 3 estimate. This is more parametric. You're using projects that have been developed recently. You might be getting a couple quotes from vendors on things. And then as the project progresses, that range of accuracy for that project decreases. The more certain you are in your design, the more accurate your cost estimate becomes. So just taking a look at where we were at our 15% cost estimate. We were there in October, and the estimate was at $445 million. Now, this came with a range of accuracy anticipated of anywhere from minus 30% to up to 50%. That's about $311 million all the way up to $660 million. That's the range of accuracy at that 15% design we were at. Today, at the 30%, we are at a cost estimate of $343 million, about $100 million less. That range of accuracy has also decreased because we've become more certain in some of those design elements. So that range of accuracy is about minus 20 to plus 30. Now, as we move forward into the final design and engineering phase, we would anticipate that that range of accuracy, again, will become closer, right? It'll decrease, and our cost estimate will be a little more certain. We would like to engage a construction manager to come into that kind of final design phase. When you bring in a construction manager, you have some more value engineering that can be done. I believe in Mr. Knowles' presentation, he talked about that early engagement during the Phase 3C project where they were able to identify some cost savings measures. It's really beneficial to engage that contractor early on. So we anticipate doing that as this project moves through the final design phase. So Katie kind of touched on some of the items that we were able to find some cost reductions in between the 15% and the 30% design. In December, we had a presentation to the board where we were actually looking at some of these potential cost reduction options. At the time, those 6 options there that were laid totaled about $80 million. And you can see we've been able to drop the budget by about $100 million. So where did that come from? So out of the 6 options that were listed, we did take advantage of 5 of those, and that relates to about a $40 million savings. I just wanted to kind of call your attention to the first option here with deferring the river intake. We talked about that as a means to reduce costs. At the 15% design stage, that river intake was estimated at about $41 million. Katie kind of covered some of those cost savings measures through workshops with operations, getting some additional geotechnical and bathymetric survey information. The cost of that river intake structure right now is estimated at $28 million. So the effect of moving or taking it out of the plans would reduce our yield from 18 MGD to 14.5 MGD. So currently, the river intake pump station is still included in our 30% design plans. The value there has kind of shrunk in removing that out of the project. And then the last item here, the cost savings on the water treatment plant expansion. Again, we are currently in the preliminary design phase. We have our owner's agent completing a design criteria package. We've got the pilot plant out at the facility now. This $110 million, again, keep in mind, is the conceptual kind of budgeted number way over there on that left-hand side. As we move through this design criteria package, we anticipate getting a better number and seeing maybe some potential for cost reductions. So real quick, just kind of looking at the four major components that make up that cost estimate. We've got our mitigation costs, the pump stations, pipelines, and the reservoir. The three bars just indicate the three different levels of design that we have hit, and that is the feasibility in light blue, the 15% design in dark blue, and the 30% design where we are today in green. You can see that the majority of those cost savings occurred in this pump station and pipeline sections, right? And you would anticipate that. That's where a lot of the mechanical and electrical equipment. We were able to remove some of those large diameter pipelines, might have a little less operational flexibility, but it's still moving the water where we need it to be. The reservoir, you look at the cost of the reservoir, it really didn't change that much, which is what you would expect. It's a lot of earth movement, right? A lot of dirt. There's not a lot of mechanical, electrical equipment, not a lot of volatility in dirt. So that cost remained the same. You roll those all up, and you can see the difference between the total cost of the PR3 project at 15% at $445 million to the 30% design estimate at $343. Just again, to remind you, we're at a class 3 estimate, so we have a range of accuracy anywhere from -20 to +30. But also keep in mind that we have $112 million committed from the Water Management District for this project. And as Mr. Manson denoted, we have $12.5 million, hopefully, within the legislative budget for the project, taking the customer's contribution down to about $218 million for the PR3 project. Talked a little bit about those funding opportunities, just kind of wanted to break out the design and the construction phases here. So the preliminary design was at $7.25 million. We will be moving forward into final design and have an estimate of total design fees of around $18 million. However, we have secured $14.75 million in grant funding for the design of this project. 100% of the preliminary design has been covered, and about 90% of the final design is anticipated to be covered for this project. With additional funding from the Water Management District, the authority and their customers' exposure is about $1.65 million for a full 100% design budget. It's about 90% covered. On the construction side, again, we're at that $343 million estimate with $112 million committed from the Water Management District and the potential for $12.5 million from the state. We're looking at about $218 million for the construction side of the project. Just real quick, going into some of the next steps, we talked about as part of the district's funding, we will be doing that third-party review. That's starting this month. They will look at not only the design documents, but also those construction estimates. The conceptual permits are anticipated to be submitted in May, next month, with a full permit application to all the regulatory agencies for their review being submitted in September, which will end the preliminary design phase. We would like to proceed with final design October-ish timeframe. We'd like to come back to the board with a work order to begin that final design phase in October, and then hopefully bring on a construction manager at risk by the end of the year to help give us some of that early contractor engagement into the process. So with that, I'll take any questions. Katie will be available if you have any design questions.
Yes, sir.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Specific detail in the plans, probably for Katie, the step, soil cement step on the walls. Why that method, number one, and is there a cost savings if you do, like the C43 reservoir is a smooth application. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different drivers. That surface is an erosion protection surface. And so, we're in Florida, we have hurricanes, we could have pretty large waves in those reservoirs. I think the authority staff saw that during the most recent hurricane in Reservoir 2. And so you really have to look at how do you protect this earthen embankment so it can handle different storm conditions. And so there's a variety of storm conditions you look at, including 5 to 6 foot waves and different wind loading. And then you need enough mass to sort of weigh that down. And so there's some pros and cons of the stair steps allow breaking up of the waves. If you think about a smooth surface, a wave comes and crashes up and runs up that surface, and you need to contain the water in. And so there's this balance point of the cost of putting in steps, which allow you to reduce your total embankment height, versus having a smooth surface, which means you have to go up higher in order to contain all of that run up. And so you balance the two out and say, okay, well, if I can bring this embankment down by a couple feet by putting in stair steps, I save that times 5 miles around. And so you do sort of a pros and cons analysis. Really, it comes down to meeting the needs for how it's going to function, and then how much does that cost?
Right. And so your analysis is this is really the best way to go.
For this particular reservoir, yeah.
I appreciate that.
And we're going to continue to look at it when we approach 60% design. That's something we continue to look at. So we've got both the cross-section, what happens inside of it for seepage, and then also what happens for our crest height and our erosion protection.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
And one comment.
Your microphone.
The Senate bill currently, is $12.5 million on our $25 million request, but it's going into a joint budget commission with the House. We're still lobbying to keep it to the $25 million to see if we can get that number back up again. But to be conservative, we wanted to go with the amount that's in the Senate bill now. And of course, we don't have that in hand yet, but we're very hopeful because there is a lot of resilience money, and this is a perfect project for resilience money.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Anybody else?
I would just say kudos on bringing it down $100 million for this phase. If you could continue that for next phase, we'll be really
We'll be right there.
Great.
At least it's going in the right direction.
All right. And this was just for information purposes only. This requires no action, correct?
Correct.
All righty. Thank you, Ms. Terry. We'll go into agenda item number 8. Mr. Jim.
Okay, I know it was up there.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Jim Guida, your Director of Water Resources and Planning. I'll be presenting today the consultant selection for the Peace River Brackish Groundwater Project that was mentioned earlier. This is an action item, and there is a staff recommendation and a motion at the end of the presentation. I'll just do a quick recap on the December board where we talked about this project. I'd like to give you a quick overview on the history of the water use permit and the recent permit modification that we got to add brackish groundwater to our water use permit. Historically, the authority has relied on its surface water supplies, and in 2019 we received a 50-year water use permit to continue that, and again relied on the 100% surface water as our supply source. Brackish groundwater was identified as a potential water supply source over 10 years ago for the authority, but an opportunity arose in 2022 to optimize that possible source. We pursued a permit modification. As Terry mentioned, without the permit, you can't move forward with the new water supply source. We're happy that we were able to receive this water use permit and make this a possible new source of supply. So the modification was received in October of last year, again for brackish groundwater that we would use in a conjunctive use with our surface water supply. The permit authorizes withdrawals of 9 million gallons a day of brackish groundwater, and assuming an 80% treatment efficiency, that would result in about 7.2 MGD maximum day on an annual average basis, 5 million gallons a day, and on a peak monthly basis, about 6 million gallons a day. Brackish groundwater will certainly help us diversify our supplies of water, increase our drought resistance, and also increase our overall reliability. Continuing on the recap, at December, we talked about project costs and funding considerations, what should be our path forward. We talked about continuing design value engineering on the surface water expansion project. You just saw that from Terry and Katie. Also continuing to pursue state and federal funding, which you just also saw in the previous presentation. We simultaneously talked about pursuing preliminary design for brackish groundwater as a potential alternative water supply project to the surface water expansion project, should the board decide to want to do that. The estimated cost preliminarily for this project would be $110 million, yielding again about 5 MGD on an annual average basis, about 7.2 million gallons a day on a maximum daily basis. So we developed a scope of work for both hydrogeologic and engineering services. The hydrogeologic drilling program is going to be looking to try and determine production capacity of the wells and the aquifers that we have, the groundwater quality of those particular aquifers, looking at ways we might optimize the well field. That could be the well design, the configuration of the well field, and also looking at a potential water use permit modification to see if it may be feasible for us to increase production above 5 MGD annual average and 7.2 MGD maximum daily. So that's also part of the project. We would anticipate receiving 30% design drawings of the water treatment facilities, pumping, conveyance, SCADA systems, also the wells themselves, both the production wells, the monitor wells, the concentrate disposal wells that would be required, and receive an opinion of probable cost for the project. We would be looking for substantial completion of the project by April of next year, so about 1 year from today. That's a pretty aggressive schedule for doing a 30% design, but that's what we're attempting to do here. So for the consultant selection process, we did a request for proposals on February 10th. We received 5 proposals on March 13th, and the selection committee met shortly thereafter on March 10th. The selection committee was unanimous in its rankings and ranked Corolla Engineers as the #1 and recommended consultant to undertake the project. The other consultants that were involved are also shown here. And the motion is here before you. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board members, do you have any questions? Mr. Jim? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I move we approve the Professional Services Evaluation Committee's recommended ranking and authorize the Executive Director to negotiate a professional services contract and the scope and fee for the first work order preliminary design services for the Peace River Brackish Groundwater Facility project with the highest ranked firm, Corolla Engineers. The negotiated contract scope and fee will be considered at a future board meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Truex, seconded by Commissioner Cutsinger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Coates.
Which one of these is it?
They're all open down below like normal down here.
Let me see. Can I see your mouse? I want to make sure we get through. No.
Okay, not that one.
Not that one.
Not that one.
That one.
That one. All right. Mr. Chair, board members, our interlocal agreement, the interlocal agreement creating the authority requires that we establish a tentative budget by May 15th of each year. This is a presentation on our tentative budget for fiscal 2024. Board action on the tentative budget is going to be requested at the end of the item. And that'll be followed by a request for board action on item number 2 of the tentative budget, which is adoption of resolution establishing preliminary rates, fees, and charges for 2024. Now, while you just approved the amended budget for 2023, this presentation does not include the amended budget. And the reason for that is that this presentation was in the board book, and it compares with the original budget. If you'd like, I have another presentation which does compare the 2024 budget with the amended 2023 budget. Up to you, whichever way you want to go.
Let's show I think we should show the current scenario moving forward.
The 2023?
The amended budget.
The amended budget.
Yeah, that to me is the current scenario now that that's been approved. Makes sense? Yep, okay.
Grab that.
Just close this one.
Grab this other one.
Okay.
I'll make you do more work.
Only 5 more steps.
Did you do that right? You want your notes?
Is that it?
Yes.
All right, with those preliminaries out of the way, we will go through the tentative 2024 budget, and we'll use as a comparison what the board just approved for the amended 2023 budget. So as the region grows quickly, and you've heard the fast pace of growth on a number of the presentations today, we're continuing our efforts to extend the regional transmission mains and develop new supplies needed to meet those increasing demands. In the fiscal 2023, the amended budget, the project spending for the projects like the pipelines you talked about today, the reservoir, brackish groundwater, comprised about 54% of that budget. The 2024 budget, they comprise about 65%. So we're moving up in that, and we'll see that continue to move up through about 2027. The development of our annual budget is guided by a number of documents. Those include the 2005 interlocal agreement, the amended master water supply contract. We have to take into consideration utility revenue bond documents, which include debt service schedules, debt service coverage obligations, and Ann Lee mentioned a few of those. The board has adopted budget policies for maintenance of reserves, contributions, and assessments. The capital improvements plan that Terry talked about in item 4 needs to be considered in this, and the strategic plan that the board adopted in 2021 also needs to be followed to make sure we're on the path that you've set for us with the next budget. In addition to developing a budget that's consistent with the documents I just mentioned, other obligations and initiatives also drive the development of the annual budget. These include maintaining the supply capacity that you have in our facilities. That's 34.7 million gallons a day that's been allocated to our customers for the Peace River facility, and delivery of the estimated 32 million gallons a day that's been requested by the customers for delivery in 2024. we make every effort we can to run an efficient and cost-effective operation. And part of that is making sure that we maintain the facility in excellent condition. That's maintaining the renewal and replacement, repair and maintenance. All of those things are kept up to date, and the budget reflects that. One of the core values in our strategic plan is financial security as well. And financial stability is critical as we look toward permanent financing options for the projects that we've talked about in the CIP. Temporarily, we have our $100 million line of credit. That is going to be retired here fairly soon, and we'll be looking to the bond market and elsewhere to get permanent funding for these CIP projects. And so it's important that we maintain certainly good financial standing, and we impress the bond rating agencies with all of that. And of course, we need to maintain reasonable water rates, which is becoming more and more difficult nowadays with the high cost of power and chemicals. Everything's going up rapidly, but we're trying to deal with those as best we can. The budget timelines shown here. At the February board meeting, I discussed budget considerations for fiscal 2024. We developed the tentative budget. We provided that tentative budget to your professional staff. The meeting with the professional staff went over the budget issues. We are here today to talk about the tentative budget and adopt the tentative budget. We have one more board meeting between now and August 2nd where the final budget would be adopted, that meeting in June. And there are also two professional staff meetings in between that time. So if there are any changes needed between now, after the tentative budget adoption, and August 2nd, the final budget adoption, there's time to make those. Also, the budget documents are available on our website at regionalwater.org. The authority is set up as an enterprise fund. All of our operating funds come from water sales, assessments, from our 5 customers, grants, and borrowing. We don't levy any taxes to pay for any of this. And the enterprise fund is split into 2 functions. That is administration and facilities. Administration covers the Lakewood Ranch facility. That is executive, it's administration, it's human resources. And those charges pay for salaries and for that office operation. And then facilities is everything else. It's water production, engineering, construction, water resources. And that, of course, the facilities portion of the budget is by far the largest component in our budget. So you look at the breakout of the proposed administrative and facilities costs in fiscal 2023, the amended budget in fiscal 2024, the tentative budget, and you see about 1% of the costs for administrative charges here, and about the rest of the 99% is for facilities. The table shows that the proposed budget for fiscal 2024 is about $40 million higher than the 2023 budget. And most of that increase is associated with the capital projects we've talked about today. New reservoir, the new pipelines, the RO project. But before we get into the actual budget numbers, I do want to walk through the components of the authority's water rate and talk about how those water rate components apply to our customers. The master water supply contract allocates 34.7 million gallons a day of capacity to our customers. And the breakdown is shown here. Charlotte, Sarasota County have about 90% of that capacity. Between Northport and DeSoto County, the other 10% of that capacity. These allocation percentages determine the customer's share in the fixed operations and maintenance costs that are billed as part of the authority's base rate. And so we'll be talking about these in a little bit more detail here in just a minute. The authority's water rate is made up of two components. The base rate, which is assessed to cover both the fixed operating costs, and these include staffing, and they include repairs and maintenance, renewal and replacement costs, and debt service. The fixed operating charges are assessed to each customer based on their percentage share of capacity in the Peace River facility. For example, Charlotte County has 16.1 million gallons a day of the allocated capacity of that facility. That's 46%. So Charlotte County pays 46% of the fixed operating costs for us. The debt service costs are assessed based on each customer's participation in authority debt, and that's quite variable. Different customers have participated differently in authority debt issues and projects. Just to give you an example, Charlotte County only has about 25% of the authority's debt, even though they've got 46% of the capacity. Mostly that's because they got in early when we purchased these facilities back in 1991, and the debt for that 1991 facility has been paid off. So they have less debt associated with our facilities. The base rate charge is charged to each customer no matter how much water you take. These are charges these are costs that we incur no matter how much water we produce. It's like the mortgage on your house. Whether you use every bedroom in your house doesn't matter. You still pay the mortgage on it. The water use rate charge is levied only on how much water is delivered to an individual customer. And the sum of those is the total water rate. What we're going to do is talk about the revenue side of the budget, and then we're going to talk about the expense side of the budget. And on the revenue side, we've got the comparison of the 2023 amended budget with the 2024 tentative budget. Water sales revenue in 24 is projected to be up about $4.2 million from the 2023 amended budget. CIP funds for the CIP to support the two regional pipeline projects, PR3, are about the same as they were in 2023. Grants from SwiftMud and the state are up $37 million from 2023 to 2024. These grants in 2024 are going to provide more than 50% of the costs for those CIP projects as we move through the 2024 budget. The other category we have in here is on par with the 2023 numbers. This includes planning assessment, member fees, those sort of things. Reserve funds is up about $300,000 in 2024. These include internal transfers, those type of activities, and carry forward is just that. In 2023, that was $1.5 million. Let's see, carry forward, yeah. So in 2024, the carry forward is actually quite a bit less than in 2023, and that's because we're spending more money. In 2023, we had about $4 million just strictly in carry forward. The other component of that, is, of course, is funds that are returned to the customers as part of the debt service coverage. But for 2023, we had $4 million. 2024, we only have $2 million. And so because we're spending more, there's less carried forward, then that does have an effect on the water rate. This graph shows the base rate charge proposed for 2024 and for the previous 4 years. And the base rate charge covers debt service, as I said, fixed operating costs. Between 2020 and 2023, the base rate charge increased about 4.5%. Between 2023 and 2024, the base rate charge is up about 11.5%. And I'll discuss the reasons for that in the next couple of slides. The base rate charge for the 2023 amended budget is shown here, about $28 million in total. 2024, about $32 million in total. The difference is about $3.3 million. As you can see, the majority of this base rate charge is paid by between Charlotte and Sarasota County because they have 90% of the capacity in our facilities. The 2024 base rate charge is dominated by increases in power and chemicals, insurance costs, you heard about those earlier, personnel costs, less carry forward. So there are a number of items that contribute to that increase above what we normally see in the base rate charge of about 4.5%. On the water use rate, you just approved the water use rate going up to $1 per 1,000 gallons. Our rate model shows that for 2024, it needs to go up to $1.09 a 1,000 gallons, considering the increased cost of power and chemicals. So it's going up roughly 8% from just the 2023 amended budget. This is a similar graphic on the water use rate. Use rates increased about 2.6% between 2020 and 2022. And then we did see a significant increase necessary in 2023 due to escalating power and chemical costs that took it up to $1. And the rate model shows that we need to go up to $1.09 in 2024 to deal with those similar increases. The rate model also shows that in 2025, 2026, presumably we will go back to just a few cents a thousand increase each year on this. That, of course, assumes that power and chemical costs moderate. We have no idea whether that's really going to happen, but we're hopeful about that. Whoops. Couple more items in here. We have management and planning fees for revenue. Last year, what we did with this is we levelized this assessment. This assessment ratcheted up and down quite a bit in the past based on the projects that we had for management and planning, and these are projects like the 2025 Water Supply Master Plan update, coordination with the Polk Water Cooperative, various conservation efforts. And we looked at all the projects for the next 3 years and said, here's the total agglomerated cost of those things we believe. And then we just levelized it to try and take out some of that variability. The cost does not differ this year from last year in total. The costs the assessments are based on the customer's pro rata share of the total 4-county population. So as we see some population shifts, these numbers have increased and decreased a little bit, but in total, they really haven't changed at all. For the expenditures side of it, Similar to the revenue comparisons, the graphics show a comparison of the amended budget at about 102 million, with the tentative budget about 141 million. Operation and maintenance, of course, is the cost of running our facilities. O&M is up about $2.4 million from 2023. Most of that is increased power and chemicals, personnel, benefits, property and liability insurance, those sort of things. Debt service is unchanged. Projects include not just the CIP projects, but renewal and replacement projects, management and planning projects. This is up $37 million from 2023. And county payments here is the same. Disbursements about the same as last year. And other is roughly the same as last year as well. We dive a little bit deeper into some of these individual components, operation and maintenance. It's the power and chemical costs have increased significantly, and those are driving that. Power and chemical costs are up about $900,000, so 7% over the 2023 budget. Staff and benefit costs are projected to be up about 9.5%. That's almost $700,000. That includes adding one new personnel with the authority, and a 7% average increase in compensation across the board. We've got 63% increase in property insurance, and Ann talked about that a little bit earlier. Renewal and replacement, repair and maintenance costs increased about with inflation. It's around 7%, and really no change in most of the other operation and maintenance cost centers. Our other rate-related expenditures category, they include the items that are identified there. These represent mostly internal fund transfers, contingency funds, debt service coverage amounts, total $9.6 million in the budget. Some of these lines have increased, like contributions to R&R. We expect R&R to cost more because everything is costing more. So we ratcheted that up by $250,000. Transfers to the utility reserve fund based on how much the operation and maintenance costs are. So as those go up, we need to increase the transfers to the utility reserve funds. The result of all of this, though, in all of this category is only a $26,000 increase from 2023, which is a very, very small percentage. So we get to the larger part of the budget and the CIP expenses. We projected $85 million in expenses in CIP in 2024. Those include all of these projects here. In 2024, more than half of those costs are expected to be paid by grant funding. So we've got $47 million worth of expected grants coming in. That's about 55% of the total cost for the CIP projects. For the authority's contribution, about $39 million will come from the line of credit, the $100 million line of credit that we established last fall. We have two system-wide benefit projects. The system-wide benefit projects are smaller CIP projects that we put in a separate category because they benefit the entire regional system. And one of those is our partially treated water ASR project. We expect to spend $500,000 on that project in fiscal 2024, all of that money coming from a state grant. And the water resource and construction building that Terry talked a little bit about, $1.5 million coming from the CIP fund. for that project in 2024. Finally, the budget disbursements. Each year we collect money from our customers to make debt service coverage. And then at the end of the year, we return that money to them and collect more money again. It's like a perpetual motion machine almost. But we are obviously we're returning that 2023 contribution, and so that is also in there. If you roll all of these up and look at prior years, O&M costs are increasing fairly slightly with time until you get to 2023 and 2024, when we see pretty substantial increases in chemical and power costs, so they're going up more quickly. The non-O&M cost, which includes debt service, transfers to the CIP, shows a bit more variability. And a lot of the variability is associated with this 2022 situation where we refunded a fair amount of money to the customers from a refunding that we did on the bonds. So that one kind of knocks this a little bit out of whack, but otherwise it stays pretty consistent. But the big change is in the CIP. And we saw the CIP increase significantly in 2023. 2024 is the same way, and we're going to see significant increases in 2020, all the way through 2027 for these projects. So before I get to the motion, I'd like to see if anybody has any questions about the tentative 2024 budget.
Board members, you have any questions? Mr. Coates? Clear as mud?
Yeah, it's
No.
muddy water.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect it any different where everything else goes up.
Well,
Everything.
Yeah, and do you remember what the percentage of chemical costs increase were? I read it, and I don't remember, but there was like an item that was 86% more expensive or whatever, and there's a number of them that have significantly increased. I mean, I certainly understand all that, and we certainly don't have a crystal ball for the future.
Right.
But I don't remember what the overall percentage was. Do you remember?
I don't remember what the overall percentage was. We had 4 chemicals that we bid this year. One of the chemicals actually decreased, but it's the chemical we use almost none of, which is unfortunate. But we had increases that ranged from 12% to, I think, 60% in there. And
Angela, did you know the average or?
For the FY24 budget estimate,
I read it.
In aggregate, we have 5.1% increase for chemicals, and those were based upon our estimates from the March 6th opening. So we had increases of 15% for the sodium hydroxide, and we had 20% increases in several others. That's been the trend line so far.
Thank you, Ann. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $141,522,579.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Truex. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cutsinger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0.
all right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I have in your board book, although I didn't include it in here, there is another. Is it? I don't think it's the next slide.
Just a follow-up resolution.
This being my backup presentation, apparently I didn't include it in there. All right. Then the second part of this is a motion to approve Resolution 2023-05. That's a resolution setting forth rates, forth the preliminary schedules of rates, fees, and charges for 2024, which is in your board book, but not in my presentation.
Okay. I think we got it covered. Any questions that y'all have seen or? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Move the resolution.
Go ahead and move for Resolution 2023-05.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion by Mr. Cutsinger, second by Commissioner Truex. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Coates. All right, Mr. Manson.
General Council's report. I'm just going to give you an update on the master water supply contract. We're in the third amendment of the master water supply contract is on hold right now because we're waiting for, remember the master water supply contract has an Exhibit B, which is the customer's water allocation, and Exhibit C, which is customer's authority's water demand. And right now, we've got everyone's but Charlotte's while they're debating, what to do with their projects. We've circulated the update. We've received comments, made alterations. It's been out to the lawyers and staff. I think we're ready to bring it up, but we need to resolve Exhibit B and C, which won't be resolved until Charlotte determines what their water demand is going to be for 2023.
It's on the agenda for 425, and I've got them here, and I've already shown them to Mike. But that hasn't been approved by the board yet, so.
No, not a problem.
Yeah.
But that's just the reason why I'm not moving forward. But B and C need to be accurate, and they need to be what the customers want, and so we wait until then, and then we'll move forward with the contract.
Agreed. Thank you.
I don't have anything further.
Okay. Any other board members got any questions for our general counsel? All right, executive director's report. You got anything to add, Mr. Coates?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
All righty. Okay, about wraps us up. We got our routine status reports are in our book. Any board member comments?
No, just got to join you as an alternate today. Enjoyed that. Appreciate the information. For me, the challenging thing is, we're all facing it. Just difficult cost increase that need to get passed to our customers, but that's just the way things are right now. So appreciate everything can be done to kind of keep those to a minimum. In addition to these, we're also doing the major improvements to our facilities, and we're going to be raising rates to help pay for that too. So we'll just have to navigate this as best we can. But appreciate all the efforts, and just thankful to be with you today.
Well, it's great to see you here. Not that I don't like Mike, he's a great guy, but it's good to see you, and thank you for coming. It's also good to see Commissioner Mayo in the back of the room. Welcome. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for stopping in today. We're all faced with major cost increases across the board. We've got still supply chain issues, as we know, having to order things 6 months in advance. And Charlotte County is going to be going through some of the painstaking processes that Sarasota County is going through with a number of projects that we have, and we're going to be at a crossroads as to what we're going to be able to take on and what we're not going to be able to take on. But we've got to continue to work together and serve the region. That's what this is designed to do, and just happy to be a part of it, and just want to thank you for the opportunity to make those comments.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And yep, I was gonna, you stole my thunder. Our former partner back there, he snuck in and hit on us back there, but it's good to see you. Apparently retirement's kind of boring, so you come to see us today, but we appreciate you thinking about us and coming to see us. Any other comments? Mr. Cruz, you're good. Commissioner Cruz? All right. Any other public comments if necessary? All right. Seeing none. Our next authority board meeting will be in downtown Arcadia, Florida. June the 7th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. at the DeSoto County Administration Building on the first floor. Our next meetings will be August the 2nd in Manatee County, October the 4th, 2023 in Sarasota County, and December 6th we'll be back to DeSoto County, and all those meetings start at 9:30 a.m. Is there any other thing or business needs to come before us at this time? Okay, if not, thank y'all for coming, and we stand adjourned.